Got a little frog in my throat this morning. Didn't mean to have that there. Golly. In the last year, I have lost 4 close friends. I know that I am of that age when people begin to make their transition. After all, I'm not 40 years of age anymore. That, however, does not make the process of losing them any easier. Bob was a college friend and married to another college buddy. We were in each other's weddings and shared occasional vacations, and Bob loved to discuss religion with me. Why? Because he was an atheist. We had been friends for over 55 years. Helen was a former member of this center, and when she moved away several years ago, we maintained a friendship via telephone calls and Christmas cards, as well as email. I can still hear her laugh that came from the very core of her being. Danny was a student when he walked into my recreation program class at Cal State Long Beach. Ultimately, we became good friends and we skied and camped together, and Danny worked for me. We never, unfortunately, got the chance to go fishing together. It was something that we both loved to do. There was always something that seemed to get in the way. Our planned trip with 2 other close friends came a few weeks after his passing from cancer. We knew each other for over 45 years. I became close to John when he married a dear friend. We spent many an evening over a bottle of wine and a delicious meal that he had cooked, philosophizing, discussing the state of politics in America, and as well as the meanings and significance of Native American spirituality, totems, and symbols. It was something that we were both interested in. His death came unexpectedly and was quick. There were only moments left for my girlfriend, his wife, children and grandchildren to say goodbye. All of these friends left a big hole in my world, as well as those who loved them. Each of them reminded me of the Daniel Nemod song or music we heard earlier this day called The Last Song. All of them had made incredible contributions to their profession and had made a difference in their world in some way. Were they famous and well-known? No. But to me and those who loved them, they were special, and I truly miss each of them. You're probably wondering why I'm speaking about death in a month that the theme is about oneness. The answer is simple. We never lose our oneness with God or others, even when we cannot see them, even when they have transitioned from the planet Earth. After all, death cannot contain God, so how can it contain our loved ones? We need only remember the story of Easter to be reminded that individuals we love go on living within each and every one of us deep within. Any of us who have lost a dear one knows when they are near. I am often reminded of the scene from The Ghost that starred Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze as Demi Moore watched a penny go up ever so gently the door. And she watched this and she thought, how could this happen? But then she realized that it was her husband, Patrick Swayze, who was letting her know he was there and gently moving the penny. She cannot see him, but she knows it's him and she knows he's there. My brother Ken passed Christmas of 1991. Our entire family was challenged by his passing. He was only 50. Several years later, feathers began to show up in strange places, And they were always there, it seemed like. Perplexed, I questioned the constant appearance of feathers one day at a Asilomar at our annual church conference. And a fellow practitioner, without missing a beat, said, "It's your brother, Eileen, sending you love, letting you know he's there." I was amazed. And from that point forward, when feathers would show up in my life, most of the time it was when I needed assurance or in moments of challenge or sorrow. He always knows when to come. Just like God is always there when we least expect her, she has never left us. We need only a nudge or a gentle reminder. I'm here. I am one with you in this sacred space and place. It is our choice whether we fall into the divine embrace or ignore it. I believe that love is very much a part of oneness. Ralph Waldo Trine stated, "When we fully realize the great fact of the oneness of all life, that all are partakers from this one infinite source, and so the same life is the life in each individual, then prejudices go and hatred ceases, love grows and reigns supreme." Oneness is an intimacy like no other that we have ever experienced. Ernest Holmes, in the Science of Mind text, states this is the perception that Buddha, Jesus, and other great spiritual leaders had. They understood that the universe has to be one in order to be at all. Jesus said, "Who hath seen me hath seen the Father." As Holmes put it, Jesus has arrived at a perception of oneness. What we must understand is that oneness does not stop when someone passes or is not with us any longer. In fact, it is strengthened because we embrace our oneness in a new way. They are no longer here physically, but they are ever so deep inside of us. Often when I speak of oneness, I am reminded of the story of the Cherokee boy who wants to become a man. And so it is a sacred ritual for this boy during that process of becoming a man. And at some particular time, his father knows exactly when it's time for the process or for the ceremony. And so the father takes his son out into the forest and he puts him on a stump and he blindfolds him and he leaves him there all alone. And he's required to sit on that stump the whole entire night and not remove the blindfold at all until he begins to see the rays of the sun coming through the blindfold. He can't cry out, yell, "Help, help," and get anyone there because he's too far from the village. And once he survives that night, he has become a man. He cannot tell other boys about this experience because each of the young boys must also go through the same process to become a man. This boy is naturally terrified by the strange and unusual noises that he hears behind. He thinks to himself, maybe it's a wild beast. Surely he's here with me. And the wind blows and the grass moves and the earth shakes and his stump bumps. But he must sit stoically the whole entire time, never removing the blindfold, never knowing exactly what is out there. And finally, when the scary and horrific night is completed and the sun begins to come through his blindfold and he removes his blindfold, it is then that he discovers his father sitting right there beside him. He had been watching him the entire night to make sure that his son came to no harm. We too, like the young Cherokee boy, are never ever alone. God is always within us, sitting on the stump beside us. And of course, the moral of the story is just because you can't see God doesn't mean he's not there. So just what is oneness? Simply put, it means there is no separation from God, each other, and all things within the universe. A couple of weeks ago, I was camping and working on this Sunday lesson. Somebody wanted to know what I was doing. And when I told them about the lesson, they said, well, what's it about? And I talked about oneness, and they wanted an explanation. And so, what is oneness? And my own personal beliefs that I related to them was that our oneness is just not about our intimacy with God and others. It's also about a willingness to forgive. There can be no oneness without loving kindness and compassion. Oneness is knowing and understanding another individual's pain without judgment or a need to fix it. Living in oneness is letting go of duality. It is gratitude for our intertwining with nature and with others. About that time, somebody said, look, and they pointed up towards the sky. There were 3 ospreys flying above us, all at a different level, through and around the trees, over the stream, and they were circling. And it was as if they were a team. We knew that they were searching for food because there were trout in that stream. And as we stood there and stared into the trees and the skies with the wonder that we all had for these beautiful creatures, I told the others, this is a perfect example of oneness. Not only were the ospreys one with each other, they were one with their surroundings as well as us. In 1 Corinthians 6:7, we are told, but he who unites himself with our Lord becomes one with him in spirit. This concept of oneness is certainly not new. That verse was written over 200 years ago. According to Sensei Alex K. Kuyo, in an article about the teaching of Buddhist oneness, he writes, oneness is a teaching that states all living beings are in the same pot. We share the same roots, and where what benefits one of us naturally benefits all of us. Similarly, what hurts one of us hurts all of us. So we must practice right mindfulness and use our inner wisdom in our daily life. If we don't, the results will ultimately be a disaster. For example, if we cut down all of the trees near our home, our air quality will suffer and it will become more difficult to breathe. If we poison our rivers, then we'll struggle to find clean drinking water. Of course, we still have our individuality. The river is a river, the tree is a tree, you are you, and I am I. And we're still human beings living seemingly separate lives. But if looking beneath the surface, we see the oneness of all things, then we begin to understand that all living beings is tied to the river, to the trees, and the people that surround us. So we care for them just like we care for ourselves. It is a simple reminder that when we harm others or Mother Earth, we harm ourselves. When we fail to recycle, for example, we are harming all of the environment. When we don't pick up a piece of trash, we are failing to honor Mother Earth. And when we use the drive-through at a fast food outlet, we contribute to the drought as our car idles emissions into the air. There are so many connections in our oneness with God, each other, and our surroundings. There is an intimacy with the divine when we come to realize and embrace our oneness. We've all heard the definition of intimacy, into me, I see. Oneness is seeing into ourselves, not being afraid to see all of the farbles that God sees. In our oneness with God, we come to a place of acceptance of ourselves through knowing that she isn't done with us yet, and that we are perfect in this moment, just the way we are. Oneness is about having the courage to accept ourselves and others just as God has. God has never, ever left us, but we have left ourselves sometimes when we look within and are afraid for what we see. Oneness is working from the inside outward, not the outside inward. What happens outside of us may just be the nudge that forces us to move to a deeper place of oneness, to grow, to forgive, and to heal. In knowing ourselves at a greater and deeper level, we come to a place of knowing the divine at a greater depth than ever before. Why do you suppose finding our oneness with God and others is so difficult? Simply put, it is us and our thought process that prevents it. In an article by Matteo Sol, he tells us, while our mind helps us to plan, imagine, create, structure, and logically understand life, they also simultaneously fragment our existence. When life is broken down in terms of thoughts and concepts and ideas and beliefs, we cannot directly experience the oneness of everything. Instead, we perceive life through broken lenses. Until we can take off those cracked glasses, we will continue to see ourselves as being isolated and separate little entities who see the world only in black and white, rather than the beautiful, magnificent colors that surround us. I call it the rock tumbler effect. If you've ever seen a rock tumbler, you know it's an electrical machine with like a large cylinder on it, and you place unpolished rocks within that cylinder, as well as some abrasive sand and water, and you turn it on. Now, it's not just one rock in there, it's a multitude of rocks, and they work together within as one as this tumbles through. And after about a week, you take it apart, you take everything out, wash them off, wash the stones off, put it back in, more water, more abrasive sand. And you continue this process week after week after week, only stopping to change the water and the sand and to begin again. Ultimately, a high polished stone is born. What began as a rough and dull stone turns into something of beauty. All of the stones in the cylinder contribute to the polishing of each other. They each are dependent upon each other. That is why our spiritual growth process, there are abrasive things that transpire in our lives, like the loss of a loved one. We're forced into the tumbler we are not ready for. We resist in our pain and our anger and our frustration and feel abandoned by spirit. And yet God is always there within us, guiding our process, sitting on that stump next to us. Oneness is not trying to get God to conform to our way of thinking and being. It is about us taking responsibility to explore the very depths of ourselves. And in so doing, we come to know our relationship in oneness is never ending and always growing, always deepening. There are many forms of inner work. Not all processes, however, focus on self-exploration, acceptance, and integration of our inner parts. While our path of choice can be slow, it can also be the deepest work that we can do. There are no quick fixes. To have more than a fleeting glimpse of oneness, we must make our unconsciousness conscious. As luminary Carl Jung once said, wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration of the contraries. As I leave you today, I'd like to give you a couple of final readings from sacred sources that will help you understand our oneness. The first is from the Gospel of Thomas. When you make two one, and when you make the inner as the outer, and the above as below, when you make the male and the female into single one, then you shall enter the kingdom. And of course, the kingdom is that oneness with God. The second thought is from the Tao. How can the divine oneness be seen? In beautiful forms, breathtaking wonders, awe-inspiring miracles. The Tao is not obliged to present itself in this way. If you are willing to be lived by it, you will see it everywhere, even in the most ordinary things. Indeed, we see our oneness with each other and with the divine in ordinary things. All and my friends and family who have gone before me continue to be one with me, just as God is. They're not far from my thoughts or from my heart. And indeed, I recognize them in the sacredness of the ordinary that surrounds me each and every day. This is the